In today's video, I'm talking about the truth about acid reflux. 60 million Americans have some sort of acid reflux, and roughly about 15 million Americans are taking some sort of acid blocking medication. The most popular ones are things like Prilosec and Nexium, these proton pump inhibitors that stop stomach acid. Now here's the real truth about acid reflux. A majority of the cases, they're actually too little. In fact, there's not enough stomach acid. It's not that there's too much stomach acid. So let's break this down. In fact, the number one cause of acid reflux is low stomach acid or underproduction of stomach acid. Why is that? Because stomach acid is very energy demanding to produce. It takes energy to produce stomach acid. It takes really good parasympathetic nerve tone, vagal nerve tone, to actually stimulate the stomach to produce stomach acid. In our society, we're oftentimes eating on the go. We're eating in a stressful state. And because of that, we are not actually allowing our body to get the nerve tone that it needs to stimulate the production of stomach acid. So eating on the go, eating on the run, eating when we're stressed, really bad idea. We're not going to produce the stomach acid that we need. Now, why is stomach acid so important? Number one is it sterilizes the food we're eating. So when we eat food, even if it's been freshly cooked, there's bacteria and different microorganisms on that food. Stomach acid should normally reduce the overall microbial load of the food as it enters our body. So it kills off a lot of the bacteria that's on that food. It sterilizes the food. It's super important for keeping the bacterial balance of our gut microbiome in check. So that's the first thing. Number two is it breaks down protein. It actually activates something called pepsin, which is a key enzyme in our stomach that breaks down protein into amino acids. We need those amino acids to support healthy muscle tissue, healthy skin, healthy immune cells, healthy red blood cells. All of those things are proteins. And so we need to make sure that we are breaking the protein we consume into amino acids, and then we're able to take those amino acids and produce new healthy cells, new healthy proteins within the cells. So very important for amino acid digestion, also for chelating minerals like magnesium, calcium, zinc, and iron. Very important for chelating and absorbing these minerals into our system. We know so many people are deficient in magnesium, they're deficient in zinc, right? If we're not producing enough stomach acid, or if we're taking a proton pump inhibitor, Prilosec, Nexium, we are actually causing an inability to absorb magnesium, calcium, in some cases iron, zinc. We're causing zinc deficiencies. We're causing amino acid deficiencies. We're causing B12 deficiencies because stomach acid, when the acid gets low enough, it activates something called intrinsic factor in our stomach, which absorbs vitamin B12. You see, when we're at rest, our stomach acid should roughly be between 3 and 3.5. When we start to eat food, particularly food that has a lot of these minerals or food that has a lot of protein in it, we need to get that acid down between 1.5 to 2.2. That's very energy demanding. So we have to have energy to produce the acid to now break down the food that's coming in our body, right? To sterilize the bacteria on the food. And also on top of that, it helps to close the esophageal sphincter. So when the acid gets low enough, the sphincter, the muscle that protects the esophagus from acid, closes, right? And then the food digests and starts to move through what we call the pyloric sphincter, which moves it into the small intestine. When we don't have enough acid, food just sits in the gut. So when food sits in our gut, it starts to rot, gas forms, and now that gas pushes up on that esophageal sphincter, opens it up, and now acid from the stomach jumps up into the esophagus, burns the esophagus, and that's why we get the acid reflux-like sensation. And so super important that we're getting the acid low enough because that moves food through the stomach into the small intestine, triggers the release of bile and pancreatic enzymes, so we get optimal digestion of the food that we're consuming. So again, number one cause of acid reflux is low stomach acid. Number two is H. pylori overgrowth. H. pylori is a gram-negative bacteria that when it overgrows in the stomach, it shuts down the ability to produce stomach acid and causes low stomach acid. So we can oftentimes have low stomach acid from stress, from bad eating habits, from aging, but we can also get it from having an H. pylori overgrowth. So those are the top 2 causes. Number 3 is a hiatal hernia. This is when part of our stomach actually jumps up through the diaphragm, and now our stomach is kind of split almost in 2. And now a lot of times food will get stuck in that area of our stomach, the hernia, the herniated region, and that will continue to spill up into the esophagus and cause problems. So what do we do for a hiatal hernia? You can do a self-massage on that area, kind of coming on the left upper quadrant and pushing down, or have somebody help you with that, moving that hernia down. You can also drink water in the morning, ideally in the morning when you first wake up, drink water, stand up, and then jump up and down, right? So get enough water in your stomach so there's some weight there, and then jump up and down. And a lot of times that can push that sphincter, push the hernia down, right? And reduce that hiatal hernia. So that's really key there. The 4th major reason for acid reflux is food sensitivities, okay? This is gonna be like, for example, if you have a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity or a nightshade vegetable sensitivity. Let's say when you eat potatoes or tomatoes or something like that, you just have reflux. You eat bell peppers, okay? You get reflux when you notice that. So obviously in those cases, you avoid those foods. And a lot of people notice, okay, when I don't eat spaghetti sauce, right, tomato sauce, I don't have reflux. And that's because they had a sensitivity to the tomato sauce, as an example. Number 5 is a histamine intolerance. There are certain foods that trigger more histamine release, and some individuals that are very histamine sensitive will notice that they get more reflux when they're consuming those foods. For example, apple cider vinegar, which is one of the best ways for most people to improve their stomach acid. Just taking a little apple cider vinegar and water can really help improve stomach acid levels. But if you have histamine intolerance, fermented foods like pickles, like sauerkraut, like apple cider vinegar can actually trigger worse symptoms. And so if you take a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water and you notice reflux and pain shooting up into your esophagus, when you do that, and you made sure the apple cider vinegar was diluted, like you took a tablespoon and let's say 4 ounces of water, drank it, and you still noticed reflux in your esophagus, could be a sign you have histamine intolerance. If you notice when you eat fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, you just don't feel good, okay? That could be a sign that you have histamine intolerance. And there's a whole list of high histamine foods and low histamine foods, and you could focus on the lower histamine foods in order to get things back in balance. That's key. And apple cider vinegar is one of those things that a lot of times triggers people that have issues with histamine, okay? Then the last thing is SIBO. When you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that can also trigger acid reflux. And these individuals typically don't respond well when they're eating foods that are higher in FODMAPs. That's gonna be things like, for example, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli or beans, for example. Or in some cases, it could be dairy with lactose, or fruit even can cause problems for these individuals if they have SIBO. And so these are a couple of the major mechanisms for what's going on and what may be causing the acid reflux. In general, what I would recommend doing is taking a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with your water, okay, and trying that out and seeing with about 4 ounces of water before a meal and see if you notice if that improves the acid reflux. If it improves it, it's a sign that you're dealing with low stomach acid levels. You're not dealing with the histamine intolerance, okay? And you may not be dealing with the SIBO, especially if you notice that it improves your tolerance to a lot of these cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and asparagus and things like that. And so that's one way to test, right? And one easy, simple way that you can do it. For some people, they'll also take a stomach acid supplement called betaine HCl, right? And you can take that with enzymes, and that can oftentimes help relieve acid reflux. And I have whole videos on how to actually test for acid reflux and strategies for overcoming acid reflux. But the key is to understand what is actually the root cause of it. Is it a histamine issue? Is it H. pylori? Is it H. pylori overgrowth, for example? Do you have bad breath on a regular basis? Common with H. pylori is constant bad breath is really common. Belching is very, very common again with H. pylori as well. But that can also be the hernia. Have you had pregnancies, right? A lot of pregnant women end up with a hiatal hernia because the stomach, the top of the stomach, gets pushed up as the body is expanding. So you kind of look at your history and how your body is responding, different symptoms that you have to help understand what the root cause of it is. But the most important thing for you guys to understand is that acid reflux is oftentimes not associated with too much acid. In fact, the only time it is associated with too much acid is the histamine intolerance. When somebody has histamine intolerance, histamine triggers the production of stomach acid, and they may be producing too much stomach acid. But you know what? The answer is never taking a proton pump inhibitor like Nexium or Prilosec, or if you do take it, taking it for as short a period of time as possible while you address the root cause. I actually prefer, if you are noticing a lot of reflux and it's painful and it's causing problems, use baking soda. Just take a little bit of baking soda and water, and that will actually stop the acid reflux. Now, that's not getting to the root cause. It's not actually improving your digestive system. It's just getting rid of the symptom. But you gotta address the actual root cause and get off of those proton pump inhibitors. In fact, those medications are associated with early mortality because they're associated with B12 deficiencies, zinc deficiencies, vitamin A, vitamin D deficiencies, magnesium deficiency. And so those medications, taking them for a long period of time, will cause chronic health problems. You've got to get off those medications as quickly as possible and really do your best to optimize your overall stomach acid production, and that will help bring down the acid reflux and make you be able to digest your food effectively and comfortably and absorb the nutrients you need in order to thrive. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this video training, and we'll see you in a future video. Be blessed.